Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for Unlocked, brought to you by Doors Open and quietLoud. We're really excited to have you here. Today's session is all about opening up the world of booking agents, what they do, how they work, and how you can start thinking about building a career in this area. I'm just here to kick things off. The real host today will be Alma and Ned, who will be guiding you through the session. So before we dive in, I'll go through our session etiquette for today. Firstly, the session is being recorded, so by staying, you're agreeing to be part of the recording. It's mainly so we can share it afterwards with you and others who couldn't make it live. Secondly, for the best experience, I would recommend you to switch to speaker view if you haven't already. It'll make it easier to follow the presentation and enjoy the session without any distractions. Thirdly, like questions, we've seen all your great questions when you signed up, and we really thank you for that. So there's no need to repeat them, but if anything new comes up while Ned and Alma are talking, feel free to drop it in the chat, and I'll be keeping an eye on it and bring them in if time allows us. And fourth, please stay muted while the session is running. It just helps keep everything clear for everyone. So if you need anything, just pop it in the chat. And lastly, if you have any technical issues, please reach on to me in the chat and I'll try and help you out. So before we fully jump into today's topic, I'd love to hand over the mic to Amy. She's the Chief Impact and Cultural Officer at Resident Advisor, and she's here representing Doors Open, who made today's session possible. Amy, over to you.
Thanks, Panikos, and hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. It's really nice to have you all here. I just wanted to give a brief introduction to Doors Open, for those of you who are not familiar, but it's a not-for-profit platform that we set up in 2019 just to help demystify and help diversify the industry. I'm from Wales, and I don't know about you, but in Wales, you didn't really find out what the music industry was until I was about 27. So yeah, we're just trying to help people figure out what different pathways exist, what different roles exist behind the scenes, and just help equalize access to this information and knowledge. So Doors Open is a CIC, so it means it's a community interest company. So any projects that we do or any money raised, it goes straight back into creating initiatives and projects to help with our mission. I'm absolutely delighted to have Ned and Alma here with us today, who can give some incredible behind the scenes insight on becoming a booking agent. So I'm not going to take up any more time and I'm going to hand over straight to you guys.
Hello, hello, hello. Testing,
Yeah.
testing.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining. We can't see you as you are too many to be visible to us. And that's a little bit odd, but we'll get used to it by looking at each other sometimes.
Yeah, this is the first time I've done a webinar where I don't see people in front of me.
Yeah.
So we trust there. We see lots of people there. Again, thanks for joining us. There's still some people coming in, but we're gonna get going. So what we've done, just to give an overview of what we're going to.
If I drink, CTP.
Yeah, maybe Panikos. I think you can mute everyone. Everybody, can you Panikos? Everybody, or if not, if everybody can mute themselves. I mean, there's too many people for it to be interactive, so we're not gonna be able to have other people speaking, unfortunately. So what we've done is during the application process to join this talk, there were questions that people were asked, what were you interested in? What do you want to know about? So we collated all of those questions. Thank you so much for that. There's so many interesting questions, hundreds. And we collated them all and fed them into the latest AI models. And that's given us a format for the 90 minutes. So we're going to try and incorporate as many topics and questions as possible that came up. So I'll be guiding us through that, and we'll go step by step. But first, we will introduce ourselves. So Alma, why don't you introduce who you are and what you do?
Hello, I'm Alma Ernst, and I've been in the music business for more than 30 years. And during that time, I was driving through different fields as well. And that was something like working in a club, working for a record store, working for a music magazine, traveling a lot with artists, being a manager, being a label manager. And eventually I focused totally on being an agent, and had my own agency for 25 years and folded, and then joined the lovely team of LittleBig. And there I represent 6 artists. And then during that time, I founded the educational platform quietLoud together with Ned and Panikos. And the initial idea was to help others to become agents. And this idea arose because during all the years, I always had an intern that first was an intern, turned into an assistant, into a junior agent. And I was always very happy to share my knowledge with them and my experiences. And in return, I got so much enthusiasm and a good source for new trends, for new artists that I wouldn't have discovered without them. So I was very happy for this. And yeah, so I'm a happy agent, and I hope you all are going to be happy with our answers today for your questions.
How long have you been at LittleBig? I know roughly.
I think 2019.
Okay.
Just before the pandemic started, 3 months
Yeah,
before.
so 6 years.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I'll introduce myself a little bit. I came into the music industry, well, I mean, I guess while I was at university, started putting on parties, DJing, and that kind of slowly grew. I had the opportunity to work at a record label as an intern, and that's when I understood more about the music industry and started being involved in live events properly. And from there, realized what an agent did. It took a long time, and this is why I like doing stuff like this, because even though I was working in this industry, I still had no contact with music agents. It can be a very kind of closed, behind the scene kind of job. So I'm happy to expose it whenever we get the chance. And so LittleBig is now, we celebrated 20 years last year. And very happy to have a team of about 15 people, maybe 10 agents in total, and 5 support staff. And most people who've been at LittleBig have been there a long time, which is something we're really proud of. We're based in Berlin, but there are people spread all over, and they keep moving. So there's a few people in England, there's someone in Cyprus, there's someone in Slovenia. Basically, you know, like when they've been working with us for a long time, and then they say, hey, I'm getting married, I'm moving here, and they continue, so they spread. Which actually is a really interesting part of the operation, because there's people everywhere. I represent around 5 artists myself still, and I spend about half of my time on the company and speaking to the other agents and kind of advising on situations and being involved in more kind of strategy stuff. And Alma started setting up quietLoud a couple of years ago by testing, doing what we now label, or what Alma labeled as rent an agent and become an agent. And it was kind of testing, showing people and playing with the model of how an agent works, which I found fascinating and really wanted to support it. So I'm really happy that it's built into something where we can work with lovely people like Doors Unlocked and RA to take it further. So let us begin. So the first thing that we got together is, what does a booking agent actually do? And this, again, this is collecting lots of questions that were asked, and this is kind of summary questions. So what does a booking agent actually do day to day? What are the responsibilities of an agent? what's a realistic view of this career? That's a big one. So I'll start with what does an agent actually do day to day? It's pure communication. The whole job is communication. Email now, on the phone a lot. So it will be, and also it's like there's this funny thing because it can be quite overwhelming. Like, you know, you wake up in the morning, you're like, what do I need to do? And there's like so many bits to what we're doing. There's shows to book. There's you know, some problem solving to be done. There's some accounting. There's some like problem with some invoice. It's kind of overwhelming. So there's this constant kind of prioritization of what we're doing. That's how I see it. So I've always got my list, my to-do list that's been updated. And day to day, it's speaking to the artists that I'm working with and their teams. So maybe they have a manager, or maybe they're working really closely with a record label or a PR company, whoever that is, or maybe they're just working completely alone, communicating with them, and to keep the plan of what we're working on clear, and then communicating to the promoters, the festivals on the other side, to try and action the kind of strategy. So there's this kind of holding of some sort of strategy, like what are we doing? Like what are we working towards? And then kind of boiling it down into what we can get done in a day, communicating to some festivals, communicating to some promoters, lots of kind of chasing, you know, where are we at with this? What do we need to do on this? Is there anything you want to add to that? I mean, it's kind of a tricky question because of course it changes a lot day to day as well.
Yeah, it changes, but the day to day, how I organize it normally is like, what can I do best on the time of the day? So my best focus is in the morning. So I would focus on anything that is delicate, on flights or organization, admin stuff. And then goes later, I would also do a lot of research about clubs and new stuff that needs to be developed. I would put that in the end of the day. Basically.
So why do you do it that way around? I'm interested.
Because my focus, like I'm better in the morning to be in details. I have a better focus. I can better focus on stuff. And later I can, you know, with the research or with other stuff, it's okay if I'm paying less attention. Yeah. I think my high time is morning 10 to 12. Yeah. And then everything goes down. So yeah, I'm not looking at the prioritization of my list. Yeah. I'm rather working like that and saying, every day the same. I start with this and then I continue.
There's always I always feel like there's two parts to what we're doing. One is like where you're being proactive on the plan that we have. Yeah. Like, we really want to play this festival. I need to, like, the kind of reaching out and booking. Yeah. And then the other part is this more kind of like reactive, like I need to do this bit of accounting or I need to solve this problem. Yeah. But yeah, I try and keep that in focus. Like, am I being proactive and working on the stuff that people need? Yeah. Or am I sitting on my inbox and like responding to small, like, where's that invoice kind of thing? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So the next question was that we summarized was, what are the responsibilities of an agent? Can you talk about that?
I mean, that is always a funny question because we as agents sometimes think we're doing more than our responsibility is. Because if there's no manager, we also take part of that, or even accountant and other stuff. But the agent should only be responsible actually for the bookings and take care, as you already mentioned it by the tasks, take care of updating the network, promoters in what's new with the artist, find potential new promoters for the artist, find a strategy plan, you know, talk with the artist. Basically work on behalf of the artist and try to represent them as good as possible in a very diplomatic way and be on the side of the artist, right? I would say.
Yes. It's a good question because actually we talk a lot in the company about what our responsibilities are and what our responsibilities are not, because there's lots of gray area and overlap. And I think as we've done it more, we've got better at defining this is what we're responsible for.
Yeah.
You know, like when we start working with an artist, we have a pretty detailed kind of procedural kind of terms and conditions document that is like, you know, this is what we do, this is what we don't do, this is what we do. But I didn't used to have that. Like 10 years ago, I didn't have that. And it was a lot more kind of messy in terms of where the lines are.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. There's always a big difference as to whether the artist has a manager or not.
Yes.
So you work with, most of your acts don't have managers.
Yeah.
So then there's a bit more responsibility.
Yeah. So the artist would also come and say, hey, what about pitching to this podcast, you know, doing an interview? Have any contact to magazines and stuff, which is usually not what we are supposed to do. And you either have the contact or you don't have it, but you don't have to really feel responsible for it. I think what changed for me nowadays is I make sure I talk clearly with my artist.
Yeah.
Before we get together, and I say, okay, this is what I can give to you, and this is what I need from you in order to give this to you.
Yeah.
Because it's also depending on what we get from the artist in order to work.
We'll come back to that because we're going to talk about the roles in an agency and more about what we do. Okay, so moving on, there was this question about what is a realistic view of this career. And also there was an interesting question, what are the realistic income expectations for an agent in the first 2 or 3 years? It's like, so it varies. There's lots of variables at play in this question. Of course, it's a commission-based job. So, you know, an agent who's working with big artists who are earning big fees is earning a lot of money. And an artist who's working with small acts who are earning small fees is earning small money. It also depends whether we're talking about whether you have a job in a kind of bigger agency organization, like lots of the kind of London or LA or New York big agencies. They will take on junior agents, and you know, of course, there'll be a fixed salary like any normal job. You know, if you took on a junior agent role, in a bigger agency, you'd be looking, I guess, something around 20-25 grand to start with. And so, you know, that's a kind of salaried role, which is very different from a kind of freelance agent, which is how we came into it. So now, of course, we have a company and people are on salary, but we started as just pure independent freelance, just purely earning commission. And if you're starting like that, you're looking, you know, if you're starting completely from scratch and building a roster, you're looking at much lower. I mean, you know, if you built up, if you got like 5 or 6 smaller artists and you started booking them, you'd probably be looking at somewhere around 1,000 a month as you get going. And then the game is, can they get bigger and can I earn more commission? Lots of people who start doing it, this was my experiences, Alma's, Brandon, Raf, lots of people at LittleBig, they do it in conjunction with something else. They're running a label, they're booking a club, and it organically tags on to what they're doing. So, you know, it'd be hard to survive on €1,000 a month in any big city, but it's something that kind of organically grows with other activities is what we see. Okay.
Yeah, but you can also get, you know, another deal with your artist and say, listen, you know, I'm happy to do this, but because of the small fees, I would need you to pay monthly an extra in order to make it. I know this exists as well.
Yeah, more like a different model, more like more like an assistant.
Yeah,
yeah,
just to make it worthwhile, you know.
Yeah.
That it's because.
We had another funny question. What traits make someone a great or terrible booking agent?
Yeah. Which one should I say?
Right. whatever comes to
I
mind.
think that terrible is a bad word, but I would say an agent that takes things personal is on the wrong path. You know, that's number one. What I always experience, with also with students that I had in my courses, or also colleagues that are junior agents talking to me. They are frustrated, but they also feel like, yeah, somebody personally does them bad because they get no reply or to a pitch or something. I think that's something we as more experienced wouldn't do. You know, it's normal not to get an answer, or it's also sometimes normal to get a very cold tone onto something. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a kind of an agent attitude, I guess, that comes with time, where you try and stay passionate. There has to be passion, but you're not taking it personally. If something goes wrong, that's, you know, because lots of things can go wrong with live events, you know, missed flight, hotels not what it looked like, the slot time is wrong. There's a lot of kind of, you know, the thing that's exciting with live events is they're live, everybody has to be there, the artist has to be on stage at a certain time, the production has to work, so it's intense and it can be stressful and lots of things can go wrong. So you need an understanding through the whole team and through the artist and through the manager that you're working together and that there's a kind of positive problem solving attitude, not a kind of finger pointing and blaming. What about positive? I mean, communicate, it's all communication, it's all kind of being, I mean, outgoing. I mean, so much of it's on email now as well, but I do think the best agents are out there and they know the promoters, they know the venues, they know the festival stages firsthand. So it's very outgoing, it's very kind of, you need a lot of energy. And you need to, I would say you need to be able to handle stress as well. It can be.
And I think, as we also said before when we talked, is there are agents that are just handling this as a product and they deal with it a little bit different, you know. And those just have to be really good in marketing, I would say, right? They just need to know how to sell this artist to the right time and to the right event, and have, I think they mostly have a really good connection as well, probably. On a business level more than on a passionate level.
We're going to come back to that as well, aren't we? Because we will talk about the roles and the different type of agents in different companies. Okay, we're going to move on to the next section, which is how the booking process works. How does a booking work from start to finish? And how do you pitch an artist to a club or festival? I think you're going to take the lead on this.
A booking from the start. In the best scenario, you get a request and an interest from a promoter for your artist, and then you negotiate the conditions. The conditions is the price, but it's also whatever the flight, the hotel, the slot, the set time, so to say, and billing, the tier on the flyer sometimes can be a part of it. And then you close the deal, you send out the contract, you start looking into the logistics. We need a flight, we need a visa, everything about that. You need to also chase what has to come in, the deposits. And then 2 weeks ahead of the booking, you gather all the informations together in order for the artist to have it all on one paper or on the app nowadays, and so can travel. And hopefully that's the end of that booking, unless there's a worst case scenario. Right?
Hopefully you get paid. The artist gets paid. What about pitching an artist to a club or a festival? And also, whilst you're talking about that, what, you know, you talked about an ideal scenario where someone's asking, but a lot of the time we're pitching and there's more of a pushing to get the act on.
That's very interesting because when we did the last, the beta version of the course, we have also interviewed a lot of promoters from bigger festivals. And I think we learned from it as well, because I wasn't aware how important it is to have a personal touch to it. Like they really want to know more than just a generic pitch on an email. They say ideally they know you before you pitch the email. But I understand that this is sometimes for an upcoming agent not so easy. I mean, it's not like you just go to an event and then you meet the promoter. But ideally, it's something where you put your personality or your personal touch into the mail and be concise, have a few links, and also make sure the artist is really good placed on this event. And, that's where you can be blacklisted immediately if you ask the wrong event for the wrong artist, or if it doesn't fit.
So there's a lot of kind of relationship building and maintaining with the promoters. I mean, there's I always forget to mention how important trust is through the whole kind of network, the whole job. So when you've been doing it for a while, you've built up this relationship with the promoter, the festival, and when you're pitching something to them, they take more notice.
Also, what I found interesting, and I had more thoughts about it, because you also have this with certain festivals that are very selective with what they have on the lineups. And so people would, buy the tickets without even knowing the lineup because it's so special to them. And then talking to these promoters, I realized vice versa, they are paying extra attention to agencies that are very selective and have a very specialized approach to who they have on the roster. And then they said they are then more curious if there's something that they don't know, and they have more trust that this could be something interesting.
Yeah.
So I just want to pick up on something that Alma mentioned, because when Alma was talking about the research she was doing, talking to promoters, this was part of the beta testing of the courses that she's running, which is called Become an Agent. So one of the reasons why we're doing this is because it fits with the timing of the Becoming an Agent course starting in a couple of weeks. So we'll mention it again, but just to reference what Alma meant there, there's the course that we run as quietLoud is Become an Agent, which is all on our website and stuff. So maybe some of you have seen it. We had an interesting question that fits in this bit. How do you manage both the artistic vision of an artist and the financial pressure of bookings? That's a really good question. It's like the artistic vision of an artist versus financial pressure. I mean, so as an agent, there's always this pressure to being able to get the good options, the good slots. Like, where are my bookings? Like, I want to play this festival, I want to play Sona, I want to play Primavera. So there's a lot of expectation management as an agent, and it's definitely something that we've got a lot better at as we've been doing it a lot longer and more experienced, is that when we're constantly managing expectations. So we'll be saying, look, this is the plan. This is where, we all agree, this is where you want to play over the next 2 years. And this is the plan of how we'd get there. And this is kind of what we need in order to get you there. We need a good release. We need, nice press shots. We need some assets, some video. You need to be running your socials. You probably need some support on some of these things. You can't do it all alone. So it's kind of like this ongoing conversation, keeping people on the same page. We're also working very closely with the promoters, and there's a kind of a network team of promoters that we're kind of managing around the world. So there'll be like someone in France, someone in Spain, someone in Germany, someone in England,
that we're also relaying everything to them and saying, like, keeping the plan like alive and fresh, and then feeding it back to the artists. So it's a really good question. I could talk for a long time about that, but we need to keep moving. But I would just say that, yeah, the expectation, you know, if an expectation is out of whack with what the promoters, what the market, and what we as agents can provide, then you've got a problem. And this is when relationships break down. So when we take an artist on, and month by month, we are keeping that balance, that with keeping the artist in. How do you say that?
I think, I don't know, for me, it's also, I learned that time is, you know, it's a very normal thing to say, but I valued it more. It's like time is really money. And if I spend a lot of time, I need more money of this artist. Eventually, I can invest into artists, say like, okay, I see your potential, this can work out. But then at one point, I need to really measure how much time am I investing in this, and what do I get out financially. And that's when I can still say, okay, I'm investing too much time by your administration or the logistics or something. Can we outsource this so I don't have to deal with it? And then work on your vision or on a special project. This is also a possibility, but yeah.
There's also a kind of like, we're kind of pushing the artist a bit as well, in the same way that A&R or a record label would. You know, we're saying this is something you need to think about if you want to play these bigger slots. You know, if you're seeing your peers play this slot and you know they're earning lots of money, well, think about this. You know, think about the production and the visuals. Think about what they've been doing with their campaign around their releases. So we're also just feeding back to the artists what we understand is going on in the industry and what other artists are doing to try and keep everybody on the same page. So
I would say I always have two attempts where I really look at it, I research, I pitch, I try to, you know, do the best. And if I see there's nothing coming back from it, I eventually need to, find a conclusion about it, actually.
Yeah. We're going to move to another section. How to get started as a new agent. Lots of people were asking these questions, of course. How do I start with no experience and no contacts? How do I build my roster? How do I get a foot in the door? My foot in the door, your foot, not a foot. Okay, I will have a go at how do you start with no experience? So, I mean, you know, we all started with no experience. Everybody starts with no experience at some point. Even the biggest agents in the world started somewhere. I think there's a few routes. I mean, in some ways, there's no barriers to entry in the music industry. In some ways, like anybody can say they're an agent. Anybody can promote a show. Anybody can DJ. Anybody can put a party on. So, you know, it's not like you have to have some qualification or do 5 years experience to.
They will lose them.
I started promoting events. I would encourage anyone who is like just coming completely clean slate into the music industry and has no experience, then promoting events is like the real kind of coal face of the music industry, and anybody can do it. You know, like you go to a venue, you take a very small venue, and you say, I want to do a night here, and you figure out who you want to play, and you run a budget, and you try and charge tickets, and you make a deal with the venue, and you start to get a sense of this is what it's like doing events. I mean, an agent has to really, really understand how the promoters work, because we're between the artists and the promoters, and in some ways we're like the middle people who are in some ways protecting the promoters as well. it goes both ways. Sometimes we're saying to the artists, hey, I think you've forgotten how hard it is to promote an event. They're not trying to trick you. They're struggling to make this event work, and we need to work with them. So because we have a very clear understanding of what it's like promoting events. And it's kind of like, it's incredibly hard to make money from promoting events. So that's a very important place to understand. Probably the most important thing to understand if you're going to be an agent, of course. But of course, there's internships, there's there's Ausbildungs in Germany, working for production companies, for event companies. There's record labels. Of course, they're getting fewer and fewer, and it's harder to earn money working in a record label, but there are still record labels that have internships and will take people on for work experience and stuff like that.
I think for me, the ones that applied and then became assistant or interns, they had on their CV what like always got me in was it could even be working in a club. It's enough. Like you don't even have to do the event. Work in a club. You already have you get to know the promoter, the DJs, but also what I found interesting, a lot of them were volunteers on festivals. So you can apply for a voluntary job at festivals, and then they put it on the CV to say like artist liaison on Houghton Festival or Dimensions or Waking Life. And that gives you a good idea, and you connect with people, and also it's good for the application to an agency, I think.
Yeah, and I mean it's good now. I'm remembering when we get people asking for internships at LittleBig, and we only have a few places, but it's definitely the people who are persistent.
That is the other thing.
Who we've taken on. Who I'm remembering one intern who was great, and he must have sent his CV to me 5 times. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing from my side, but
I know.
After a while, I was like, oh my God, this guy is so persistent. It shows that he really, really wants to do this. Let's do something. And he did end up working at LittleBig, and actually from there went into other roles in the music industry. So although it seems almost impossible, there are ways in. Alma, is it better to start with one artist or build a roster? And how do I build my roster?
I mean, is there the option of just is it like, there is this one artist I start with, or do I have a roster? I think you probably end up starting with one artist that feels, your potential to represent, or whatever it is. Could be also only a personal assistant. That is one way of entering the job, and always I would say build a roster, because depending on one artist makes you really codependent to this artist. Like your whole existence depends on this artist, and also the artist is probably not feeling well after a while that because I think you also do then wrong decisions based on you need the money. Where when you have a lot of artists, then you can make rational decisions on a non-greediness base, right? So a roster is better, but I also agree that it's good to start with an artist if you have one at hand. It's better.
I mean, in some ways you have to start with one artist. You can't just say, okay, I suddenly have 10 artists. And I think
unless you work with a collective or label, then you probably have more.
That's what I was just thinking, is that a lot of people that end up being agents after somehow being involved in some scene, in some community, in a label, a club, because you need to figure out, how do I get access to artists? How do I see them performing? How do I speak to them? Is it that your artist liaison working backstage and the artist's like, this person's really on it, she fixed this problem, she's great.
so for my way in was the promoting and then working at a record label, and that's how I started to get to know some of the artists. But you know, some people at LittleBig have come a very different route. It's more through a kind of scene, a community. Maybe they play in a band and they know lots of other people playing in bands, and they're running a label, so they're connected to lots of artists. And then I always feel like there's this in our independent world anyway, there's this kind of organic movement through different roles. Yeah. And then you kind of realize, oh, this is what an agent does. I remember, like, I almost started on a very, very basic level doing what an agent does before I knew what an agent does, because I was just between a few artists, Chris Clark, Jimmy Edgar, and a few promoters who were asking, Ralph from Poodle, who were asking for them to play. And I was like, yeah, sure, I know them. Hey, do you want to play? I'll come with you, and we'll do this together. This will be great. And then after about a few months, I was like, okay, this is what an agent does. And then they take a commission off the fee. Yeah. Okay. We had an interesting question. How can I transition into booking if I already work in another part of the music industry? Well, we've just kind of been talking about.
That's what we talked about.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the best way to do it. You know, it's always interesting for an agency that you have a pre-knowledge about the music business, and also not only music business. I have to say, you can also be somewhat an accountant. That's also a good way to be in an agency, or you can be somebody. What else? Marketing, social media. Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, doesn't have to be exactly. Like in the last course, we had some people from marketing that were really good, and some, that were just working with social media kind of agency stuff. That was also very, very linked up with what we needed, and it gives you.
Yes, that's right. There's lots of other roles in and around. Yeah. Lots of artists need help with their socials and their marketing and their PR. And kind of like basic assistance.
Yeah, and the agency also thinks sometimes, oh, good, let's take this person in, because they also have the knowledge of what we are missing. Yeah. In a way, it makes it more interesting.
And how can I stand out? Oh, yeah, that's our ecosystem of a booking agent. So, leave that up for a bit, because this gives a good overview of all the different areas of the music industry. So you in the middle, being the artist. I think that's not the, or is it the agent?
No, this is us. Yeah.
Oh, that's us. Oh, okay, cool. And venues, promoters, partnerships, brands, the artists and the artists. I mean, it's kind of, there's a lot there, but we'll leave it up for a minute while we carry on talking. You can it gives you an idea of the web of the ecosystem and how many roles there are. Music lawyers, some people that we know who used to work at music agencies now separately run logistics agencies. That's true. Yeah. So it's almost like a travel agency, but focused specifically on working with artists and promoters. Yeah. Which are very, very valuable. What else did we have here? How can I stand out as a new booking agent when the market already feels full of agencies? Yeah, I mean, we don't have a magic answer to that. I think what we're trying to do is just show what we do, and also kind of expose all the different elements and roles in and around what an agent does. I mean, the main thing, of course, that everybody is trying to do as an agent is sign artists that are successful. If you're working with the successful artists, people come to you asking, hey, we want artist hype X to play at our festival. So, there is a kind of, it's very competitive. It goes in a sense without saying. And we don't want to sugarcoat it that it's easy, there's lots of agents out there who are looking for interesting acts to sign. It's competitive. How do I stand out as a new booking agent when the market already feels full of agencies? You do a good job, and you find a way to make contact with interesting artists, and you build trust. It might not, like we've been saying, it might not be off the bat like I've signed all these artists, but you build some sort of reputation and trust within your ecosystem.
You know, in the course we have this set by, there are two different models of agencies. There's one that just has a roster and kind of is in the service, like represents artists. And then there's the other way of like, your agency is the brand itself. So they really take more into the design of the agency, look more at the logo, they do more events that represent them. I never thought about merge of my agency name or something, but they do this, it's more like they take their agency to a brand status.
Mm-hmm.
And so the artists that join this agency know by fact that if they're in this agency, they will guaranteed have be under this umbrella of events or the attention of the hype that this agency has. So I think that's a way to stand out by being more in a kind of this brand way. But also I have to say, I feel there are not enough agents in this world. There are more artists than agents. I see a lot of established, really good artists that have no agents. So I feel, if I would think there are too many agents, I wouldn't do a course that creates more agents.
It's a kind of interesting thing to think about, because in a way there is an element of a saturation. There's so many artists, and there's the kind of the thing that everybody's chasing is the good slots and the good festivals and the fees and stuff like that. But at the same time, there is the ability now to come in to the industry and kind of make your own, develop your own interest and carve out your own space in this huge global industry. The live industry is growing year on year on year. If you go back 10 years or you go back 20 years, it's so much bigger. Things change a lot, so there's always lots of change, but there's always stuff that just pops up out of seemingly nowhere. Some student starts some club night, has some friends DJing, and it becomes the next hottest thing. The question is, how can you kind of manage that, and how can you make that into something more professional? But we are going to keep moving. Like Alma mentioned the course again. Like we go into over, how long is the course? How long does it go? 3 months?
3 months.
Yeah. So this is like skimming across the top of everything that Alma and her guests and myself go into much more depth and address these questions head on, and almost like, okay, let's build your roster. Let's show you. Let's make an event. Let's go through this step by step. But we are pretty much over halfway through, so we want to try and cover everything. So section 5, career growth and realistic expectations. A lot of questions around this. What does long-term success look like? What are the career paths after starting as an agent? What are the biggest challenges over the time? These are heavy questions. I will start. What does long-term success look like? And how can a booking agent's career evolve over time? Well, it depends how philosophical you want to get. Because when we were preparing for this a couple of days ago, we were talking about, my idea of success has changed quite a bit over the last 5 years. Probably the COVID pause that we had, which was in part traumatic and in part kind of amazing, lots of awful stuff going on, but it was
we were at that point maybe 17 years into doing this relentless day on day booking, and then suddenly it was like everything's cancelled and no one anywhere in the world can do any shows for like 6 months, and then it extended. So it was I think lots of agents and managers and live artists and performers and venues were just like, whoa, like we can't work. So I think all of the industry during that time took a stock check and was like, okay, you know, we've actually got this time now to reconfigure and think, what we're doing, do we enjoy this? You know, which bits of this are stressful? What is success?
Yeah.
So now I would say, for me, long-term success is being in control of my time, in control of what I'm working on, feeling that I'm really connected to art and music and performance that I really am inspired by, and being able to go to events that I've booked with artists that I'm working with for a long time and stand there and think, yeah, I'm a part of this. You know, I play a small part in this career development. I chose this venue. I said this timing was good, and here's, you know, X amount of people having a really amazing experience. To me, that's success. I mean, of course, we need to pay the bills, so it goes without saying that, you know, we need shows that generate commission, that keep the company going. But success for an independent sort of small, medium-sized operation like ours, it's a way of life. You know, it's not about trying to make the maximum amount of money. And again, I would differentiate between these huge booking agencies that are booking machines and the agents and the bookers. Those roles are very, very different. So a junior agent is much more like a booker and is not in control of their roster and not in control of what they're working on. They are booking day in, day out for the agent. But in a smaller operation like this, we're more hands-on. You know, I'm speaking to my artists weekly, and lots of them don't have managers. You know, Aphex doesn't have a manager, Autechre doesn't have a manager. So I'm having very kind of in-depth creative conversations with them about what their live career should look like, and I'm throwing ideas at them. And that's, for me, I'm very happy to get to that place. Some of my friends who've gone through positions at bigger agencies are earning 10 times as much as I am now. But it's, you know, if you go that route, you have to be really ready for the competitiveness and the relentless kind of pressure of, like, you know, working towards headline slots and just hitting targets of generating commission. There's none of that at LittleBig. It's like, you know, you build your roster, it needs to fit with the kind of ethos of the company, and, you know, your success is kind of what you make of it, where you take it. Of course, we all want to earn money, but anyway, I mean, it's a bit kind of all over the shop answer, but there we go. Next, what are the biggest challenges over time, Alma?
The biggest challenge over time is being overwhelmed by the work of the amount of artists maybe you have, and the amount of artists in both directions. A big amount of artists that are not in demand, or a big amount of artists that are in demand.
Yeah.
Also a mixture of those. I think if you have a lot of artists, then you have a lot of responsibilities. So I think the challenge is how to set up the balance between your own capacity and still, as we say, it's very difficult to say, okay, I only take 3 artists and take the others out, because they eventually also have bookings. I think that is the biggest challenge. How can you navigate your roster? So it's good for you. You can justify that you do the best work for all these artists. And
yeah. So it's kind of, I mean, there's a lot of kind of time management and energy management.
Yeah.
Prioritization.
Yeah.
Biggest challenges over time. Yeah, I think it is. I think maintaining your mental health. I mean, you know, of course, I would say that it's similar in lots of areas of life and lots of jobs and stuff, but there's an ongoing it's a service that we're providing, you know, and we're earning commission, and the challenge with that is that you've got to keep going. You know, it's not like a record label where you build a catalog and then there's kind of passive income from the catalog streaming. We're providing a service, so you need to keep going. So biggest challenge over time is managing that, like Alma was saying. Where are we at? 125. I think we need to move on. Interesting question. How do you keep building momentum? Niche question. How can I work with an existing agency instead of starting my own? I think that's pretty straightforward. We covered some of that, you know, internships and pestering them to continue. We're going to move to section 6, networking and finding clients. Okay, so how do I find my first artist or client? How do I connect with promoters and clubs? How do I introduce myself professionally? How do I find my first artist or client? Well, we touched on that in terms of getting yourself into some sort of scene, promoting events, and reaching out to artists. I mean, in lots of ways, it's easier to speak to artists more than ever. I mean, when I started doing this, it was almost impossible to speak to an artist. It was like you either had to sneak into backstage or, I don't know, get introduced to them. And now you can just message them on Instagram.
But I have to say, a lot of my artists I really talked to them straight after their performance. I went up and said, I mean, you can still call them even if you're not backstage and say, good set, listen. I really need you on my roster. I really did that, you know, almost begging, say like, oh my God, that was so amazing.
Did it work?
It did work. Yeah, I said, like, I would say maybe 20% of my artist roster was based on me just totally being fascinated by the artist performance.
Yeah.
A lot of times also they cleared the floor, I have to say, and I was like so fascinated how they kept the energy. I'm like, wow, okay, this is great, you know.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So that is a way, absolutely. But as you say, yeah, social media makes it
easy.
But
I mean, yeah, now you're making me think that the way I like convinced, I mean, it's one thing kind of, you know, having some sort of contact with an artist, but then how do you convince them for them to work with you? And for me, I think it was a lot of persistence, and it was a lot of kind of like, you know, just give me a chance. Like, you know, what have you got to lose? You know, like, doesn't seem like it's going that well over there. You haven't played many shows for a while. Why don't you just give me a chance to see what we can do here for 6 months? I think I did quite a lot of that. And also some of the artists said, okay, you know, just see if you can, you know, I'm not saying you can do this exclusively. Like if somebody else, I'm open to anything at the moment, but sure, you know, try and get me some shows.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think also being linked to a label, what I did, I was approaching to labels and asked them if they would be open for a label tour. I don't know how well that would work nowadays, but that's what I did. I represented entire labels. And also I have to say, you meet a lot of artists once you go to a record store. It's an old hat, but because I come from a record store generation, I still do it. Sometimes you can go to, I don't know, Amsterdam or somewhere and just go to the local record store with great records and find very passionate people there. And there you meet also artists, you meet promoters. It's still a little bit of a hub where you, and other things where you can meet people besides quietLoud, you know, and maybe Wasted is anything like a convention, or yeah, there are things where you can go, barbecues of the party vibe thing where you can meet people.
I've never been invited to one of those.
Me too, a lot. Yeah.
But I mean, you're making me think, because the funny thing about the music industry is that in the end, we're talking about working with artists. And how do I say this? Like, it's not like there's this one size fits all, like all artists operate like this. In the end, what we're talking about is lots and lots of different, quite unusual creative people. So it's not like, how do I pitch to like banks to secure this, like I have this new like banking app? You know, you're not pitching to like professionals in that sense. You're pitching to creative individuals, and they will take chances and they will make decisions that seem kind of crazy. Like they will say, okay, I'm going to let this kid see what he can do, because I don't care. And they might have like someone saying, what are you doing? Like, why don't you work with this big professional agency? And the artist might say, I don't like what they're doing. I want to work with this kid. That I think that happened to me sometimes. I was just, I was speaking to artists that I just love what you're doing. It's crazy. And they had opportunities from bigger agencies in London. They said, I don't want to work with this big agency. It's bullshit. I don't like these businessmen. They're all like these guys with shirts who come in and like, we're going to make you so much money. I like this. I like your passion. So there's decisions that are made from the artist side. They decide in the end, that add this kind of wild element to the whole industry, which I love. It's not like some big agent in London, just because they have the best contact and the biggest acts, can then control the whole music industry. It's just way too crazy for that. So
before I also forget, I want to say that my because I even noted that down, my assistants, then when they applied, when I met them in the interview, both the last two, both shout outs to them, they both mentioned my lower sounds weird, less popular artists, less in demand artists, as why they are applying for this job. They were like, yeah, I'm such a fan of this and this art. I'm like, oh, interesting. Because if they would have mentioned my biggest artist, less interesting, but because they mentioned the lower ones, I could see the potential of them working with them, because I really needed help with those ones. And that's how it also ended up. They would be the junior agents eventually for this artist. So it almost sounds like a trick. I don't think they tricked me, but you can maybe take this.
Yeah, actually, it's my brain is whirring now, because I mean, one of the reasons we started quietLoud is because we were being approached by so many really, really good artists, and we just don't have time to. We have a model of booking, and we have a capacity, and we can't. Like, we're just human. We have, a certain amount of hours per day, and this is all we can do. So we started quietLoud to be able to interact with artists that we're not representing on LittleBig, to offer some sort of mentorship, to offer some sort of consultancy, and to offer. Alma started this rent an agent, which is like, you need advice. I need an agent. I need an experienced agent. But I'm not going to sign up with you for 3 years. I need an agent for a week to advise me on this crucial thing. So, and I mean, I could list 20 artists now who are like floating around LittleBig and quietLoud, who are great. I could name 10 of them now who don't have an agent. But they're hard. It's not easy, but they need someone with time and understanding who would say, okay, I think I know how to kind of get this going here. And this is the kind of creative bit of being an agent, which I love. It's like, think of an idea that's going to make something special happen here. Okay, like, why don't you perform this album that, not your normal live show, perform this album specifically in this seated venue? You've never done anything. I think I can promote that. So there's an element of creative kind of work. And I think that's some of the most special moments in the music industry, when you really have this feeling of like, wow, someone's had a really good idea here, and it's caught on, and people want to see it. There's lots of promoters that are like that come to us and say, I've got this crazy idea, and I want to pitch it to you and your artist. And you say, this is brilliant. Let's do it. And then it sells out, and there's this big buzz, and you're like, this is amazing. This is just an idea from someone. Moving on. What are the red flags when choosing artists to represent? I love this question.
Yeah, the red flags. Definitely, I would say, to make it very simple right at the beginning, if you have a really bad stomach feeling in the morning thinking of this artist, that's the red flag. That's what I learned. If I wake up, I'm like, hope there's no email of this artist, or hope no call comes from this artist. This is the reddest flag immediately. Yeah. And also, if somebody ethically doesn't resonate with me, if they ask or demand stuff that I think it's totally out of order, or the reality check of this artist, like they tell me, yeah, I should have what this artist has, and I think like, what? Why you compare yourself with this artist is absolutely, on different levels.
So it's back to that. What was it? The real. What was it? The keeping things in balance.
Yeah.
I've forgotten the word. The expectations.
The expectations.
Yeah, I think that's. If I'm starting to work with someone and they're like, well, I think I should be here and here and here, and I'm looking at what they've done and their profile, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so far off. I think I would just add, I mean, like I said, it's all relationships. So you have to feel that there's this clear communication. I mean, it's not to say that it's easy. There's lots of times I'm communicating with artists, I'm like, I cannot believe they're saying this. Like, we've talked about this. This is so unrealistic. So there's a lot of kind of like dealing with very, very complicated, kind of stressful communication, and taking a step back and saying, how do I communicate this? That doesn't sound like I'm just being dismissive or angry, that I'm being clear and honest. And I mean, actually thinking about it, I think it's a big part of our kind of personal development as people, as we get older, is like just dealing with that kind of complicated communication. So if I have the feeling this isn't going to work, like you're not listening to what I'm saying, you're not like respecting my communication.
If it's not on eyesight as well. Yeah, right. And also if it's something passive aggressive, or if it's something under, subliminal, I always have the feeling have to justify something.
Yeah.
Big red flag. If I keep thinking, what do you want now? Like, do you want to blame me? Then blame me. That is a big red flag, because that goes onto your mental health a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. Okay. Topic 7, skills, tools, and international tips. It's different. Okay. Skills, tools, and succeeding from anywhere. Okay. So what skills do I need to be a successful agent? What platforms and tools are essential? Can I succeed if I live outside major cities or in smaller music scenes? Yeah, there's a lot of people asking about this. How do we start? What skills do I need to be a successful agent? Well, we were just kind of talking about that. Is there anything to add? Skills? Attention to detail?
Yeah, I would really say the skills, attention to details.
It depends if you have.
I'm a really good example of the skills that I would describe. I don't have, so all the skills I would say I managed to get around them by, delegating it to others. That is my successful life.
Well, but I mean, that's not to be underestimated. But knowing what to delegate.
I would always say resilience. I always say you need to know that you will make mistakes in this business. It is unavoidable. There will come mistake, even if you are into the details. You will have a misunderstanding. You will have done a mistake. You will always see something, and then you can't, spend time into blaming yourself, be a victim, blame others. You need to troubleshoot immediately. You know, you need to clear your head and be there and say, okay, I made this mistake.
Yeah.
You admit it, and then you have to.
The power of saying sorry is not to be underestimated. Just saying, sorry, I messed up.
Yeah.
And so this is what I think we should do. And then somehow diffuses, but like not taking responsibility just never resolves.
I think somebody asked that. I think my special skill is that I can work very well with, I'm very empathic for artists that are proper artists and they can't really deal with a club scenery, or they are socially not so compatible. And I figured out my personal skill is to be a shield and, you know, to kind of help them to be standing in a good way. Their profile is unattached to that, you know, because a lot of artists then worry that they look bad if they don't party with the people, if they don't stay after the show, you know, they just want to come before the show and leave. They don't want to have anyone on the stage, and I think I'm an expert in dealing with that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one actually, because I said attention to detail, which I think is important, but it's interesting that you're saying about the delegation element, because there are really good agents who are not the best, you know, on Excel or the best at like accounting, but they're very, very good on the relationships and building. So
team player, right? A good skill is to be a team player, probably.
And I mean, how do I put this? I mean, I guess like like I was saying, in a smaller operation like ours, you kind of have to be across everything in a way. You know, you're going to ask, where's this invoice? Like, you know, you're going to ask, this accounting is slightly out. Can you help me here? But at the same time, you're going to be needing to reach out to artists and have those meetings with artists and managers and labels and kind of be confident. So I see it as there's two different skill sets, this kind of like structural and this kind of more like creative building stuff. And I do wonder if, like, you know, if you're in a big agency and you've got all these kind of assistants, they just say, you're just going to focus on the relationships and the strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine not having to be on the detail as well, but maybe there's a bit more kind of like, look, you don't need to think about accounting. You don't need to think about invoices. You just need to manage these relationships and stuff like that. You know, I think it works a bit more like that, but in a smaller operation, we have to be on the detail. Can I succeed if I live outside major cities or in a smaller music scene?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good one. I think, you know, that's the one where you are in yeah, you know, there are so many hypes about the small village. Have you ever had it? Like, I know really small cities where there was a big hype created, either because there was a label or a special club night or event series. That could be in Germany. There was something in Ravensburg, or in Bavaria, like in middle of nowhere. There was like this one cinema, and there were best parties, and that was also together with a label. Or Freude am Tanzen as well is one where they are almost like a big collective, and that's small cities, and they manage to, you know, be autark, we say. I don't know if that's an English word. Like they were working without needing the hype or needing the outside world. And be their own ecosystem. I know a lot.
I think so. Yeah, I think there's lots of examples. You know, Warp in Sheffield. Different time, but there's lots of examples of little scenes that grow up basically around one or two people. And then when you look at it from the outside, you think, wow, this is really interesting, buzzy thing. And you kind of, you go down into it and it's just a couple of people. And, you know, maybe they set up a club, maybe they build, I think everything is so connected now that
I think if you were, if you're going to be a successful agent and build a big roster, of course you've got to travel and go to different, events and network and stuff like that. But I think more than ever, I mean, some of our agents live in the middle of nowhere, but they travel a lot to festivals and key events, and yes, they've built relationships, but I think more now than ever, it's just a question of, is there something happening there? Can you build something? Interesting question. Is it better to focus on one genre or type of artist when starting out? You kind of touched on that, but specifically genre?
I think it's really better to start with one genre. Later on, I would say it's good to widen your music genres, but in the beginning, it's because then you're more integrated in a whole kind of how do you say, in a community.
And you can kind of build a network of promoters that are, otherwise you're kind of like all over the shop.
All over the place.
No, I think
and
so.
Especially like niche music is so dedicated, and I know some of them are existing through a Telegram channel, and they exchange where there are good promoters or promoters come in and they talk with each other through this channel. So I realized, okay, with a niche, you can just be your little cosmos and have a proper, healthy ecosystem in there. And I think stay with one genre at the beginning is a good one.
Sorry, I'm thinking. Niche question. What are the opportunities for people based in Latin America or smaller cities? Well, do you want to talk about Latin America?
Yeah, that's so funny, because we had interviewed a Latin American agent, and he talked about how difficult that is in Latin America. I am happy that he's now working with us as a sub-agent, because I feel don't want to say disconnected, but disconnected with the mentality of how they work. So I think in some special territories like Latin America, let's say Asia, also in Australia, but also there is Serbia, then I don't know. But I think if you know your place and you know it very well, and you know the people in there, you have an asset with that, and you can sell it to other agents that are globally working and say, listen, I know who you should choose over who, and I can say that this artist should be in this club and can help you, and then you just split the commissions. And so this is how you could work in this kind of countries.
It's a good point. We haven't touched on that much. It's kind of a deeper.
Italy also does it, So
we work with, you sometimes call it sub-agents. It's sometimes promoters who are promoting the show, but there's a kind of network of agents. Italy's a good example. So there's a few people that we would go to and say, look, I'm starting to work with this act. Do you want to work with me for this territory? Because where are the new clubs, which festival is doing well, which festival is on the way out, and I need to develop them in your territory. And the thing with Europe that's funny is all these different little markets are quite different. France is very different to Germany.
Exactly.
They've both got big local markets. So there's a lot of knowledge. It's quite different to America. I've done quite a bit of work in America recently, and it's you have the feeling that it's just one big market. But in Europe, lots of different markets.
But I also want to say that in these countries, and what my junior agents do a lot is looking into SoundCloud or just any Instagram or anywhere for new artists. So you could do it in Latin America. You could check really interesting artists for you and contact them. That is how we shouldn't forget, that is how a lot of agents work nowadays. They research, and then they contact this artist and say like, hey, let's work together. So you could do that and then take them into your country and then try to get them abroad.
Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left, and I think Panikos has put up these questions from these look new, fresh questions.
Yeah, he did. I saw he did.
Which is cool. So I guess some people have asked these now, so let's have a look. How do you handle negotiations in markets where artists' fees are lower, but artists' development is crucial? That's a really good question. I think the agent has to be aware of those differentiations. You know, if you're working in Germany, UK, and France, it's going to be very different to if you're talking about a show in Serbia or India or bits of Southeast Asia. You have to have an understanding of where the country is at in terms of the market for live music. Is there a big market for international acts or not? And then it's a conversation with the artist. You know, it's like, we want to develop this area, but you're going to have to kind of invest time. You're not going to make a lot of money, but we think it's kind of worth it. I think Asia is a good example of that.
I also have it again with Italy a lot. They like some artists get a lot of money in certain territories, and then there are other markets where you are like, okay, this is like half of what you normally get, but let's take this market because we can see there's a potential in this market, as we see others having a success there, right? This is how you measure it, I think, in a way. Or interesting festivals that you target, and you say like, okay, we want to have this artist on this festival. That's why we're gonna do a string of shows with lower budget.
That's right. I've done quite a bit of talking to promoters in Southeast Asia and China, where the fees
super low
are pretty low, but you have the feeling, especially places like China, you have the feeling that there's this big development happening and it could go anywhere. You know, there's festivals popping up and there's new venues popping up. It's just that the ticket price is very low. So you can't really change that. You can't say, well, no, we're going to charge the same price we'd charge in Dublin, because no one would come. So you know, then we would be going back to the artist and saying, look, we really want to develop this territory with you. We think it can go really well over the next 10 years, but you got to get in there.
Some artists are really happy. Some are, you know, happy to go to Asia and explore new territories for sure.
And then, so this next question kind of leads on from that nicely. What are the key steps to successfully introduce an artist into a new market? What strategy do you recommend? Well, you'd be looking at smaller clubs. Like where are the places to introduce an act? I mean, it's often about finding the right promoter who understands what you're doing, and you say, look, we want to introduce all of these acts into your market. Will you work with us? And they would have the local knowledge and say, yeah, this is the first place to do it. There's like we can do a small show here, and people are interested in new music. And if these go well, then we can do this, and then we can do this, and then there's the bigger festivals will take notice. I feel like there's quite a bit of that in South America. You know, there's lots of interested promoters. The ticket price is not as high as in Europe, so the fees are often lower. But there's lots of promoters who say, look, there's a big audience here. You've just got to come in and do this and this and this with us and work with us. And then there's these huge festivals. But you can't just go straight in and play big shows and big festivals. So I think that local knowledge is.
Yeah, it's sometimes really happened that artists were not, you know, getting any interest of a territory. Then they just went for fun to spend some time there, and then they got all the bookings. I think that also plays in that sometimes you just have to go there. Like, I don't know how many artists I had to just travel to Asia to a festival or something, and then through that they got their bookings.
There's a big question here, which I'm too quickly scanning, trying to chat GPT it into a smaller question so I can understand it. I think it's asking about, I booked many acts, the difference between acts from Europe, UK, and the US compared to those from Asia. This topic is frequently discussed among Asian DJs and producers, as many have experienced imbalances in payment and opportunities depending on the country or continent they're based in. So I assume that means when they're coming in to play in Europe and the UK. But yeah, I can imagine that, you know, some people would call it like gatekeeping. I think there's different ways of looking at it. It's like artists coming into these territories where there's this huge machine operating and this like competition for all the slots and stuff. And it's like, we want to bring these acts in from outside, but we're just not gonna splash much money on it. Like, you know, come and play here. This is the place where you can get attention and break through, but you're gonna do it for free. I mean, on one hand, it's like really, really frustrating. I think, you know, to play devil's advocate on the other side is a promoter who is saying, you know, like, I've got a job to do and I want to present new music, but I don't have the budget to spend thousands and thousands of euros on it. But yeah, I mean, I can imagine that's really frustrating. I know that there are loads and loads of amazing artists in Asia, in China, in Japan, who have a real hard time breaking into Europe and the UK and America because there's such a kind of intense competitive, and in some ways quite kind of like homogenized. Lots of promoters are like, well, this is what I'm doing and it works, and if I do that I lose money, so I'm going to do this. And you know, the job of an agent is to say, yeah, I understand, you know, let's do this one thing, and if that works, you know, let's, you know, it's a big
I think it
topic.
could maybe help if you in Asia, if you are an agent or an artist and you invite one of the agent's European artists to the festival or to the club in Asia, and, you know, get to know them from their side, and then maybe that gives you know, more of a binding, you know what I mean, and then you take them over because
I think you've got to find the right promoters as well. You know, Boiler Room and places like that are really hard to work with for us on lots of acts. But I remember like a long time ago when it was early days of LittleBig, I was connected to lots of Japanese, like really experimental Japanese acts, Ovian acts, Zuinasin, DJ Scott Chegg. And I said, I really want to, this is so interesting what you're doing. It just looks wild, it sounds wild, and I'm connected to it. I'm going to try and package it together. And we you know, they all got really creative with the branding. We called it the Osaka Invasion Tour.
Oh, nice.
And they make amazing artwork, and some designers were very inspired, and suddenly we had this thing that looked amazing, and it ended up like Ross Gilder booked it on a stage and paid decent money, and I was just like, wow. Because it was like one of those kind of the sum is bigger than the parts moments. Tricky, hard to do, but you know, if I was looking at China right now, I mean, we have someone from where does Chunggung, is it Yongsung is from? No. And you know, we're always kind of saying there's so much going on there. Let's like try and package it and bring people over. Yeah. Anyway, big topic. I think we're pretty much out of time. Is there anything you want to say?
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah, we're on. Okay. We stop at 9 o'clock now.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, just to mention once again, the scholarships and the courses that we're running. The course is about to start in 2 weeks. Become an agent, that Alma heads up, which is a 3-month course. I think we're going to send. We have.
There is a link in the chat. He's saying I added a link.
We emailed them with a link to apply. So there's scholarships. There's a very, very limited number of scholarships that we can give away. I think there's only 3 places to people that we see as being really involved, active, and ready for that kind of like learning how a professional agent works, but don't have the funds. But there's the whole curriculum, the 3-month course. Just go, like, we've skimmed over the top of everything. All those modules we go into much more detail, and you get spat out the other end of, like, really the idea is that we want to show you so that you would really understand how to start an agency or go to an agency and say, actually, I know how this works. So please do check it out.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else. The reason why we made it is we didn't see anything else out there in any university or.
No, that was the problem. You know, a lot of people that applied were always studying event management and then said, like, yeah, I just took event management because it's the nearest to being a booking agent, and that one wasn't. Yeah, you can't learn it, and So in the last course we had, we were actually successful to get agents together with artists, and they now work as agents. So I can say it makes sense, and also when we are talking like how do I get my foot into the business? That can be one way.
We will get your foot into the door.
We can get it.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We had loads of people in. Yeah. I hope you could all hear us. Thanks for doing this.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Alma. Hey, Poppy. Anyway, we're going to log off. But yeah, hopefully see you around somewhere.
Yeah. Hopefully all the biggest questions are answered now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right, Panicos, turn it off.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.